Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 9 of the microvlog series, and I thought today I would go over a little more in depth of how I make my comic books. When I'm at conventions, one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, how do I make my own comics? Today's microvlog is going to go over how I get from script to finished product. These are some of the books I have published so far. Shinju is my main series with the prologue issue. Shinju Universe is a spin-off series. It contains 2 complete 8-page stories per issue. And then my encyclopedia book that took me 500 hours to complete and I sold 6 copies of. Today, I thought I would show you how I went from script to printed page for this story. So, issue 2 of Shinju Universe. Story 1 is written by me and penciled by Nick Diaz, who did a phenomenal job, and I'm the inker and colors. Story 2 is written, penciled, ink, colored, and lettered all by me. And this is a spoiler so just pretend like you don't see this side of the page here. I thought I would go over how page 2 kind of came together here. My laptop is over here to my side, sitting on some, you know what? Here's my setup. So when I'm streaming traditional art, my laptop sits on top of my convention supplies next to my art table. That's how professional I am. So this story in issue 2 is the origin of Toa, who also known as Ashley Anders, who is Christy Anders' sister. At the end of the prologue issue here, Christy gets kind of beaten up and no one can understand what happened. In issue 1 of Shinju Universe, we actually find out why she was beaten up, and it's because her sister has sided with the bad guy and she didn't want to fight her sister because, you know, sisters. So in this story, we find out not only the origin of Toa, but how she winds up, or why she winds up siding with the bad guy, Nikati. So anyway, it's supposed to be a micro series. So Shinju Universe, story number 2, Toa's origin. Page 2, I have the panel description. She has her hands over her ears and she's trying to shut out the screams of the other people that are around her. For other artists, I'll do a little more detail and I'll add links to references, but since I was doing this myself, no real need to. Panel 2, I was gonna have a scream coming from outside her door and just getting cut off like the person had been. But when I did the caption boxes, it didn't really seem to fit in there, so I decided to just nix that whole idea. Panel 3, looking at the door, I thought it'd be more fun to have him standing in the door backlit so you couldn't actually see who it is. I did, of course, the shadow behind her as he stands over her through the door. So the artwork was done completely in Procreate. Normally I would have done some of the pages traditionally, at least penciled, but I was in a complete and total rush. So, and it's the first time I've ever penciled my own story, start to finish. Everything's done digitally here in Procreate. So these are my thumbnails of how I was going to originally do the page. And it's pretty basic, pretty rough, pretty terrible, not gonna lie, I understand this. And just for information purposes, this is how long it took. It took me 11 hours and 15 minutes of working on this one page to complete it. That's just the drawing part. So the tech pen I use for just about everything. And then I used the beat tone shader, came from True Grit Texture Supply. I bought the rusty nib set from Texture and I just don't like it. I didn't care for it, never use it, it was a waste of money. The True Grit sampler pack you get for signing up for their newsletter. The beat tone shader and their 45 degree, it's one of these 45 degree ones I use for the lines for doing all of these lines. I just will go over it a couple of times, except for like these are all hand drawn. You can see those are all hand drawn with the tech pen. That's just a little bit of dirt and grime. That's I honestly don't remember. It's probably one of these. When I draw, the canvas is 11 by 17. Well, you know, close. It's 450 DPI. So when you draw a comic book, your paper is typically, you don't have to, it just makes things easier. But your paper will be 11 by 17 with safe area of 10 by 15. and you can go outside of that a little bit for your full bleed pages, which is what this is set up for. So full bleed. Then I do 450 DPI. So you have to do to get print quality. So this only applies if you are printing. If you are doing this strictly as a webtoon or digital PDFs on Comicology or something like that, your DPI doesn't matter. But if you ever plan on printing, your DPI is very, very important. You need at least a minimum of 300 DPI, because any professional printer, if your DPI is set to 299, they will reject your file. So you need to have at least 300 for it to print. And I do 11 by 17 at 450. Just if I ever want to do like an oversized absolute edition, I can. Make sure your pages are at least 300 DPI. You can draw them at print size. You can do them at whatever size you would like, as long as the ratio, what are these? I think, what are books? 7 by 10 and a quarter or something? 6.5, I don't know. As long as the ratio is the same, you can draw it whatever friggin' size you want. I colored everything in Photoshop. Why in Photoshop? Because I can control my ink limits there. So these pages are imported into Photoshop, sized down to print size. To make sure your colors reproduce correctly, you want to make sure your CMYK ink limits are no more than 220. And what that means, so when you are coloring, so here's the important part. When you are coloring your work like this, when you're coloring digitally, you want to make sure your CMYK value, if you know your book is going to be printing on glossy paper, you can push your ink limit up to about 230, maybe 240. I stay around 220 just to be safe. And what that means is these numbers right here, your CMYK value, if you take and add these up, that will give you your CMYK ink total. The higher the ink total, the more ink is going on the paper. And the more ink you put on the paper, the longer it takes to dry. And if your paper stock that you're printing on is not designed to hold a large amount of ink, it will start to warp. So you want to make sure that your values over here stay under, I do 220. Like I said, you can do like 230, maybe 240. And you kind of want to avoid anything below like the third, like the lower third-ish of your color picker. Again, this only applies to print. If you're doing digital, who cares? You can use you have the entire color palette here because it's digital. The screens will reproduce whatever you throw up there. Print, if you're in this lower portion here, your K level, your black ink level, will be so high that, remember the ink wash video from a little bit ago? Just a little dab of black ink in water completely turns it. That's what this does. If you add too much black ink to your colors, it muddies everything up. Once it's on the paper and they merge together, it will look like a muddy mess, and that is exactly what you do not want. So you want to avoid having a high K value as much as possible, which means, and the easiest way to do that is just avoid kind of this lower third-ish of your color picker screen. And like this color here, this purple, it looks kind of darkish and keeps it, it's really not. It's like somewhere, I want to say it was like around in here somewhere, but it just happens to be the darkest color on the page, so it looks dark. That is an extremely quick look at how I go from my script to my finished artwork to printed material. So I will be doing a much longer video in the future about how I actually do all of this and all of the steps involved. It's just the job keeps changing my hours, so it's just a matter of finding the time to plan it and get everything together. Hopefully soon. I had planned on doing it by the middle of the month, but so much for that. All right, so hopefully you learned a little something today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or even message me on Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever the frick you call it. I will happily share any knowledge I have and help you however I can. Thank you very much for watching this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. And if you really enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and a little bell notification. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.